Your research. Welcome back to the Gay Sala. For the final three talks here, we have the first speaker, Dmitry. Thank you.
Thank you. The headliner of the afternoon bracket of speeches, right? There's two promising young men coming on after me, so. Anyway, so I'm here to talk to you about the proper way I feel to contextualize and frame DeFi and crypto and the fourth industrial revolution broadly for its both political implications and its economic ones. It's an inherently political technology. Even the people who operate in the space I feel don't fully understand that. But it's also an inherently economically superior one. And I want to kind of distill down why that is. And then I want to also go over a framing of cryptography kind of writ large with technological cycles. And if we have time, a concept I call it digital homeostasis, which is AI and crypto and this kind of synergistic, symbiotic antagonism they have with each other. So just to cover some terms first here, because it's important. Crypto is a digital asset that ranges from commodity, governance token, to also currency. Cryptocurrency to me is a complete misnomer. I think it's like calling the internet the information superhighway. It's archaic. Most of these things do not really actually want to be currencies, nor are they trying to. My project, and the token we have, is not really it's not a currency. Ethereum, these are commodities. These are pseudo governance type tools. Cryptocurrency only applies to a kind of a small subset at this point that don't have commodity or governance applications. So yeah, just to kind of clarify that, these are more, I feel, appropriately understood as assets. Crypto assets that perform different behaviors depending on what they do. DeFi, and this is a term that I like to use often, it's the industry I work in, means decentralized finance, which is the actual pure instantiation of crypto. It's the on-chain infrastructure. It's the apps that are built on chain that facilitate the movement of crypto assets in commerce in general, not just crypto, like real world assets, bonds, stocks, deeds to cars, to homes, eventually. But it's the infrastructure. So as an easy heuristic, if you have to create an account, if you have to give someone your email, it's not DeFi and it's not crypto. Like it's not. Like Coinbase, FTX, I'm sure you're familiar with those names. Those are brokers. Those are brokers that let you get price exposure to crypto assets. You don't really own them. They can rehypothecate them, which means lend them out unbeknownst to you. And that's not unique to them. All brokers do that. If any of you have a Fidelity account, E-Trade, what have you, those assets are held in what's called street name, and they're lent out many times without you knowing. Same thing happens with them. FTX just did it to an egregious degree, an illegally egregious degree. But using that as an indictment of crypto is like if Fidelity imploded and using that as an indictment of the stock market. Like they're just a tool to access this market. They're not that market themselves. And they're not in any way, as far as I could perceive it, as DeFi or crypto. They're corporations, they're brokerages. DeFi is permissionless, anonymous by default, by its core essence. And depending on how decentralized it is, it's also uncensorable, though decentralization is very much a spectrum. Some things are more decentralized than others. Bitcoin's the most you can be. Ethereum's right up there with it. And then the more you go down that scale, the more you can possibly be, censored or collusion can happen, things like that. Kind of distilling down further, like the core essence here, the difference between a blockchain and a database. A blockchain and a database is functionally a distinction without a difference insofar as the literal performance that they do, which is they store data. What's so special about that? Why are we getting so up in arms and excited about, literally decentralized databases? It's how they do it that matters, including major differences in how they're accessed, controlled, attacked, and updated. So if from a purely engineering perspective, engineering only, or if you want to just be a hater, a blockchain is, again, just an inefficient database. To decentralize is to inherently sacrifice efficiency. So why do that? And this goes into my framing of fourth industrial revolution versus the third. DeFi, Web3, crypto, and when I say Web3, Urbit fits into that well, right? It's Render, which is a way to have access to GPU usage. Filecoin, which is a decentralized way to access cloud storage. These are Web3 products, would mean that you can access them in a permissionless way to use certain services or what have you. So DeFi, Web3, crypto, all very similar ilk. These are fourth industrial revolution technologies. And unlike industrial revolutions before them, their sole motivation is not just to make human activity more efficient. There's a great Steve Jobs quote that is, technology is just a bicycle for the mind, which is a really appropriate way to frame this, just to say it doesn't change the human condition or really human nature, it just gets you where you want to go more quickly. If I need to get somewhere in a horseback carriage or in a car, I get there quicker with a car. If I want to relay information to someone and I want to do it, with a pen and paper and handing it off, or I email it, I just got it there quicker. So I just freed up more time now to get someone else to get something there quicker, and it either manifests in higher productivity or more malaise and people not knowing what to do with their spare time. It depends on the person, but that's really what technology does. It facilitates you getting where you want to go fundamentally more efficiently. This technology is not really actually at its core built with that in mind. Like, the engineering is designed actually in a less efficient way. Its primary motivation is to disintermediate the permissioned middle, which I'll discuss more in a bit. Globalism outsources the workers at the periphery, and blockchains disintermediate the gatekeepers at the center. So there's a great Vitalik quote on this too, where he says basically this, and uses Uber as an example. Uber right now is a corporation that sits in the middle between me getting access to a cab. If I could just be routed directly to the cab guy and say, hey, pick me up here, he's coming right to get me, that's great. But Uber is a permissioned gatekeeping middle because it facilitates that interaction. A blockchain gets rid of someone like that. It basically attacks that instead of globalism, which again outsources the periphery and the more fungible labor, I suppose. So seeing this, by the way, I hope you guys, I like writing it out on the slides because I know people are cell phone checkers. So if you want to just glance up, you can see what I'm talking about and go back and keep reading. With that in mind, we are intentionally building less efficient databases because it makes them more impervious to abuse, censorship, and corruption, because the permission middle is often where censorship and coercion occur. DeFi's first order goal is to mitigate political abuses fundamentally. It's to not let someone be able to kick you out. It's to not have to make you KYC. Because there's a trade-off of engineering efficiency, which is redundancy, distributed networks, no single controller, for robustness and open access. So that's why we're making inefficient databases, because it's harder to corral them, it's harder to corrupt them, and it makes them more robust to censorship and attack. And decentralization at its core is not like a buzzword fun thing to do. In fact, it's not fun at all. It makes everything harder, but it's because it's a defense mechanism. It makes you impervious to the corruption that happens when you are centralized in one node. Because then one guy calls the shots or one person can corrupt that thing. When you distribute that, it's a defense mechanism. It's not fun though. Like, you're not doing it because you want to do it. You're kind of doing it because you have to do it. And with this framing, I understand DeFi not as an engineering solution, but a political one, because this is a politically optimized technology at the expense of engineering optimization. So DeFi makes accessing and building previously privileged resources and infrastructure a right. And I don't mean right in like a flowery academic, healthcare, whatever's a human right that's in vogue. I mean, like, no, literally no one can stop you from using it. It's a right because, like, you can just get on. I can't stop you from using my project. Like, I don't know who you are. I don't know how you're accessing it. And if in some way we found out and we had to block you, just respawn and join again. Like, we can't stop you. That's the essence of this. That's the essence of permissionlessness. And permissionlessness, which means you don't need permission to access anything in DeFi, is a profoundly critical concept for us. And again, it means no one can kick you off the network or stop you from using it. This is in complete contradistinction to the rules of states and corporations. They in no way operate permissionlessly. For them, everything is permissioned, everything. So again, these are loggerheads here. This is unstoppable force and immovable object here. The core essence of this completely undermines how the state and corporations currently operate. This is a technology that both routes around them and says, hey, you also can't control or stop people from using it. So again, a lot of people building in this space are not like libertarian, let's go type guys, but I don't think they also understand the political implications of what this means. Like, this is not a state-friendly, corporation-friendly kind of technology by its essence. And I think this is a way to, another heuristic to sort of identify allies, and even those who don't know their allies yet. I think there's a lot of those in this space who are natural allies who are kind of not fully aware of what's being built here, or they have a very superficial view from what like media presents, which is a lot of silly stuff. There's a lot of silly stuff being built here, but remember, we're building permissionless networks. And that means we're also at a frontier, and the most risk-seeking people tend to be criminals and scumbags and those types, right? So we can't keep them off. So it does attract some kind of unsavory types, but it also attracts a lot of frontier forward-looking people. So yeah, a good heuristic to identify allies is how you understand the permission to middle. If you understand it as a fulcrum of censorship, coercion, and the like that, it makes intuitive sense for you to build around it. Like, I don't even have to explain to you why we'd route around it. You just nod like, yeah, I get it. Whether if you understand the permission middle as your friend or how you exert influence, you'll be continually confused about what we're building and why it even exists. Paul Krugman is a great example here. He just this doesn't make any sense why this exists. The bank does this fine. I don't get it. He doesn't think this way. He doesn't view that permission middle as an adversary. He views the state fundamentally as his very good friend. And you can see that in everything else he espouses. So how you see that nexus of control, I think actually you can triangulate a lot of other political stances from that, and also quickly identify DeFi and crypto allies kind of writ large. And again, you are implicitly advocating libertarian ideology with this technology. Self-custody, open access, not kicking anyone off, like that's a libertarian ethos, just baked into its very essence. So this is, again, the fourth industrial revolution and how it's built different. The fourth industrial revolution cannot be compared to the third or any others before it insofar as the coordination and adoption problems it'll face. Third industrial revolution technology and that before it is apolitical. Steam engines, the internet, chips, things like that, fax machines, those aren't political creations, right? They magnify everyone's productivity, everyone's efficiency, everyone's economic benefits. Those are accretive to the state, corporations, and individuals. Everybody wins. Not necessarily in the same way, but everyone benefits from those technologies. Fourth industrial revolution technology does not do that. It exists to disintermediate the existing structures of compute and finance. It is detractive to the state and corporations and wildly accretive to the individual. And you can see this on an easy nexus of thinking like, does this enhance my power or reduce my power? Does this enhance my control or reduce my control? If you're the state, it does not enhance your control. Now, there's a spectrum there on the state element. What I mostly am referring to when I say this is the US and hegemonic Western types. Clearly, some states are a little open to this, a la El Salvador. And I think it's when you recognize you have something to gain from its adoption. Maybe, or Argentina, where you haven't been managing your finances all that well anyway. I'm not really losing that much by having an alternative parallel financial infrastructure there. I stand to gain human capital. I stand to gain economic investment. Yes, I'm friendly to this. Whereas in the US's lens, there's no pro here for them. And to this, I'd say, we say separating money and state, which this plays off of a Twitter thing. What do you think that means? Vibes, essays? It's a serious thing. Like those two things have been intertwined basically since forever. DeFi removes the state out of financial infrastructure as its essence. And as its core motivation, we decrement the soft power it spent blood to win. Things like sanctions, the SWIFT network, dollar diplomacy, Bretton Woods, this is all soft power. This is all how the US gets what it wants without sending in the military. This is how the US is able to run massive trade deficits and frankly, domestically not have inflation historically that's that high. You couldn't get away with that otherwise without that demand. And things like the petrodollar allow you to do that. That's a lot of power. That's a lot of control. You're not going to be happy if you lose that. Countries wage war over this right. We sanction people and put them on lists if they violate it, and intelligence agencies overthrow leaders because of it. Saddam wanted Iraqi oil sold in euros in 2000, and a couple years later, we found some weapons of mass destruction, and he was gone. It's just how it goes. The petrodollar was probably the most important negotiating success of the U.S. I mean, I think it deserves to be put on almost the pantheon of I don't know, land purchases like buying Alaska or something. I'm not sure. It was a huge boon for the ability to further our empire and basically allow a huge amount of demand for our currency abroad by saying price this in oil, we provide you defense. It wasn't even a formal treaty either. It was literally like a handshake agreement from a Nixon admin member to yeah, we'll do it. And it just perpetuated itself. And then that created network effects for the dollar because now countries overseas issue debt in dollars, which creates demand for dollars, which has this self-reinforcing network now to where oil is priced in it. It's now a Schelling point of commerce where you needed to buy the energy of the world. So now you have these third world and smaller countries that are making debt markets in dollars. These are huge demand vacuums for dollars. This is why you can run huge deficits for a long time and be relatively not that bad. It's because there's like a sinkhole of demand for this overseas that's a result of stuff like this. DeFi, once it's allowed to propagate enough, undermines the US's ability to assert itself internationally and domestically by causing it to lose structural control of financial systems. And it's the point. It's the point of all this. I mean, it operates in contradistinction to the power that they wield and that they fought very hard to win. So on that note, I'd say, listen, I'm not telling you to sympathize with the state or the US, but empathize with them. If I was a US senator, I'd hate us too. Like, what does this do for me? Federal power is my power. You're decrementing it actively when this propagates itself. I will create whatever post hoc justification I want to attack you. And we see a lot of this now. It's manifestly nonsense, but it doesn't matter because it politically sells well. Political excuses for action don't have to be true. They have to be effective. Harkening back to the petrodollar, which there's a term in crypto we have called proof of something. So proof of work is what Bitcoin uses. Proof of stake is what Ethereum uses, where you have to demonstrate you've put some kind of work or resources into the network as a buy-in, part of its consensus mechanism. You can understand the petrodollar as a proof of violence network. The US literally ensures demand for dollars by providing military coverage if you use it. That's kind of the substrate of it. So, and, you know, violence is not a trivial thing. The US dollar is not backed by nothing. It's backed by a very big something. The US military is not nothing. And the resources of the United States also are not nothing. Like, that's very much something. Crypto does not further state, namely United States power. It actively diminishes it, and this is what the US relies on for its power. Again, these post hoc justifications you see, like it's for criminals, it's money laundering, climate equality, whatever, like just pick an excuse out of a hat. It doesn't matter. They aren't going to like it because of what it's doing. And these are just client-facing rationales for the real motivations, which is control and soft power. So again, they'll say whatever they want to say. It's fine. This is why they won't like it. This is why they're never going to like it. They'll only like certain parts of it that allow them to have control over certain mechanisms. We call these Fed chains pejoratively in our space, which is like a chain that's controlled. It's rather centralized, that could be corrupted by like a regulator or by something. So there will be versions of this they'll be weirdly okay with. If they're okay with it, that's probably why. It's because it's not really decentralized. It's just basically a database masquerading as a blockchain that has the blockchain characteristics but is easily able to be influenced or changed. So that being said, kind of intense, I know, right? Like everyone in this room is probably somewhat aligned politically on this, I imagine. But normies writ large, they're not going to really care. If I ask them, what do you think about the permission middle cert? They're like, what? I don't care. I just want to grill. And you need to keep that in mind for this kind of stuff. Like, you can't expect something to get adopted off some intense political ideology because most people just don't care. They want convenience, they want low friction, they want to be able to access their money, use it, trade it, and then go back to watching Netflix. So, let's break down the economic superiority here because it's politically superior in my mind, but not everyone would share that view. So economically now, what's the benefit here to me if I'm not necessarily politically aligned with this? So to get into this, there's an important concept called hardness. And everything in this essay is my own work, but this is not. This concept comes from Josh Stark, who's a dev from the Ethereum Foundation, from an essay called Atoms, Institutions, and Blockchains. And this is a very important concept to kind of get how blockchains do their thing and why DeFi is able to operate in a superior way. So hardness means making the future predictable in certain ways. And there are two things that have done this, and now there's three: atoms, institutions, and now blockchains. The way atoms provide hardness. In the natural world, there are elements that have properties that are difficult or impossible to change, and subsequently can be expected to create conditions that allow us to act with confidence when navigating the world. So what that means concretely, if you buy gold, you understand that there's not just going to be a huge 40 tons of gold just found out of nowhere. There's a certain amount mined out of the world each year. We don't just make more out of it. We could actually with like nuclear fusion, I think, but it'd be wildly economically inferior to do that. So when you buy gold, it will reasonably retain its purchasing power, and a lot of it won't just be printed by a government. It literally can't be. That's atoms-based hardness. Steel, when you enter a 100-story high-rise building and stand there without worry, you implicitly understand the physical atoms-based property of steel makes that building strong enough and safe. It makes you able to act in the world understanding that building won't just melt. Walls, when you get undressed behind a wall in your room, I know you know someone's not able to see through that. This is atoms-based hardness, okay? Technology breaks the hardness of atoms. NSA knows all about this. You can now listen through walls. You can now listen to things and find things out that atoms previously restricted. Technology routes around that. Institutions attempt to provide for hardness in a different way. And there's multiple layers here. So the layer one of hardness on the institutional level is governments. They create and maintain societal laws and regulations. When they create in those laws and regulations, then you have the legal system that enforces that. The way this provides hardness, courts enforce contracts. They enforce certain codes of conduct. When I enter into a business agreement with someone, I can reasonably expect that if he violates it, or if something goes amiss, he commits fraud, I know some kind of repercussion will happen. That grants me confidence to act in the world in a certain way, understanding a certain outcome will happen under certain conditions. That's institutional hardness. The courts, the legal system provides that. Banks on top of the legal system provide financial services. When you wire money out somewhere, you have an expectation it will arrive and the bank teller will not steal it. And know that these things won't happen because of this legal base layer underneath it. So this is like layers of hardness, which is expectations about how the world will act under certain conditions. And the ultimate layer beneath all this is violence, fundamentally, because violence is because the rules come from government, and government's ability to impose these rules come from violence and monopoly, because it's physically enforced if you violate it. So that's how institutions create hardness, and how governments create hardness. Blockchains are a new form of this. Blockchains and smart contracts, a la DeFi, provide unbiased cryptographic hardness that we previously needed institutions for. A good way to conceptualize how this is superior. Picture bankers and regulators as just JavaScript running really, really slowly and expensively, right? You got to pay them a big salary. They send their emails to someone else who sent it to someone, right? They're just executing code in a very inefficient, meat space, human kind of way. And embedded in all the costs and stuff you pay for brokerage fees, for bank fees, is this bloat. Compliance costs, legal, HR, the fees you pay are baked into that, okay? That's part of the cost, otherwise the business wouldn't be viable. We are automating that bloat away with code. Blockchains remove that. There's no compliance department for Bitcoin. There's no HR department in legal for these layer ones that execute autonomously. At scale, our unit economics will be superior from this because it's axiomatic. The more intermediaries you remove from a supply chain, the more value is kept by the two parties transacting in it. As a crude example, picture like a drug dealer. If I am a kingpin and I want my drugs to be sold in lower Manhattan, if it has to go through 4 different guys and pass through to get to her, all those guys take a cut. Okay? If you can remove them out of there and route direct to her, I've just made more money and she's saved money. Those economics will be superior over time. That's fundamentally what we do. So at scale, the economic value should be apparent because again, we're removing a lot of this embedded bloat and cost that is a result of institutional hardness. Institutional hardness is more expensive than ours fundamentally. And to that end, universal, open, and cheaper financial access is superior, I believe, fundamentally. And wanting that isn't necessarily political. So that's the economic angle for this too here. To remove these intermediaries should produce more effective, convenient, and cheaper financial access for everybody. And yeah, just to touch on, again, the access point, this transcends just crypto. So again, things like stock, debt, house deeds, car titles, right now these are all codified on government or corporate databases that are able to be changed, censored at will. You can be kicked out. These blockchains and DeFi can put them on public databases where everyone can see them. It makes ownership more transparent, cheaper to access, and something you can't get kicked out of. And to sum up this first part here, I feel the focus purely on the data storage and hardness overlooks the brilliance of how blockchains pull this off, which is the consensus mechanism. The power of having millions and eventually billions of people agree on what's true, who owns what, and what amount, and the history of how it got there is a very powerful development for humanity. This degree of peaceful coordination and agreement amongst billions has never been accomplished without violence of the state. It's always been coercive. It's always been forcibly imposed. This is a peaceful coordination of this fundamentally. To get everyone to agree like this, we don't just do that. So from a more macro level, from like an evolutionary standpoint, I also think it's like a profoundly powerful development for us to be able to coordinate agreement like this computationally with no violence. And through that lens, blockchains are digital truth, and there's no precedent for this kind of technology-led human coordination. Okay, so a second part now. I didn't put a stopwatch on, so I don't know how we're doing on time, but Klaus will let me know. Something I call the great rebundling. There's a well-known observation in tech that all business is just bundling and unbundling. And this comes from apparently from Jim Barksdale at an IPO in '95, when an analyst said something. It's like, there's only one way I know to make to make money: bundling and unbundling. Which is an interesting statement. Like, what does that necessarily mean? What it means is technology companies, through some phenomena, every business that they make or when they recreate themselves tend to be either vertically integrating or horizontally integrating, or vertically integrating or breaking that up again. As an example, Apple bundles computer creation, taking fragmented parts of PC markets, so the operating system, hardware, chips now, they do their own chips, and bundling their creation into one thing, whereas previously Microsoft and HP, Dell, etc., that was fragmented, unbundled. Open Door bundles the real estate agent and home seller into one business by buying the home and selling it out of its inventory. Those are two things now brought together, technological innovation. Netflix bundles entertainment distribution, which is formerly Blockbuster and theaters, and content creation, which is Hollywood. Bundles those two things together. They just all pretty much do this. It's weird. Even some examples here. I won't read them all, but even down to like certain things like the tweet or the Instagram post. Facebook is when it was verbiage, writing, right, and then a picture if you wanted, and like Instagram just unbundled that, made it only pictures. And Twitter just mostly initially just unbundled the letters and just made it just a tweet. So it's like that. This is like a natural law almost of technology adoption and propagation. If anyone wants the deck afterwards, I'm happy to send it to you so you can review these if you want. I won't read them all. So why point this out? It demonstrates bundling and unbundling as a natural law, essentially, of technology adoption, development, and proliferation. Technology propagation organizes commercial behavior in a cyclical way that groups, ungroups, and regroups it again. I think these are micro bundlings, and abstracting this on now to a more macro one that I've seen as it applies to cryptography, and not cryptography. So viewing this as a tenet of tech adoption, what is cryptography bundling or unbundling, and how much do we have to zoom out to see it? So the natural state of human communication is private, and the natural state of technology is essentially to remove privacy. Human communication at its base layer used to be private. We used to only talk in person, which meant no one else could access your chats, and they were self-deleting by default. Baseline communication is confidential, ephemeral, and between two parties by nature. Right? Then technology begins to slowly erode this discrete foundation, trading off privacy for scalability and permanence fundamentally. So as some examples here going way back when, smoke signals sent messages farther into more people, which is more scale, but everyone can see them, no privacy. Pen and paper allows you to transcribe your words so they're no longer self-deleting, but the enhanced permanence means they can be viewed by unintended parties. So this increased persistence is at the expense of privacy. Carrier pigeons, distant messages between two parties, scale, but higher privacy risks, less security. Telegraph, electronic carrier pigeon, more scale, less security. The telephone allows widespread discourse for billions, but with an oligopoly of providers maintaining the infrastructure, it has very poor privacy and high censorability. The internet is the crescendo of this, essentially. It's hyper-scalable communication built on extremely centralized infrastructure. The web is controlled basically by a small handful of corporations, and as a result, privacy is non-existent. It's a huge selling point if someone even offers a little bit of it. It's all Signal is, right? It's just messaging that's apparently encrypted. Tech companies can read your messages at will and send you for any violation they think is appropriate. And all it takes is a frivolous request from the government to just access it if they want. But super scalable. It's just all of life is trade-offs, right? You're always trading something off for something else. So as more scale-free communication is achieved, it requires more centralization and control for the permissioned middle to facilitate it. And these are this isn't like a nefarious thing. I think this is just how supply chains work and economies of scale operate. The same reason why semiconductor supply chains are extremely centralized, like I mentioned yesterday after the AI conversation. It's not because China is trying to, exert everything with Taiwan, and the Dutch have this nefarious view with ASML and not anyone wants to have it. This is just kind of how it works. It has this centralizing force because it's more efficient. Again, remember, engineering efficiency has been the mindset so far at a sacrifice of robustness or things like that. So the law of technology and communication so far has been more scalability and persistence means less control, privacy, and greater scale and greater censorability. These things are basically anti-correlated. You gain one at the expense of the other. And so right now we have peak far-reaching human interaction and communication, but at a complete loss of privacy and control. And this is what modern cryptography rebundles back into human interaction while maintaining scalability. This is a nature healing. This is like a cyclical bring back of like the privacy and kind of the things that I feel are almost a tenet of, I don't want to say natural law, but they clearly are something that's important to us. And cryptography provides this for us. Over hundreds of years, technology has progressively unbundled privacy from our speech and made it censorable to provide enhanced scalability and permanence. Cryptography fixes this, and DeFi provides this for financial communication. I use communication there intentionally. Words are information, and money is information. Communication and financial activity is a distinction without a difference in my mind. Money is a unit of resource information, and financial transactions are a form of economic dialogue. Interest rates are the price of that financial information. You are communicating actually a fair amount of things when you consume something, especially the more you consume it. You're consuming a value proposition, you're consuming where you want to allocate resources, you're sending a market signal too about the demand from you as one small little node. And if other people have this dialogue too with the economic complex adaptive system, it creates outputs, it creates certain behaviors. It creates interest rates fundamentally, which are outputs of this system and not something a central bank controls. So this is all communication fundamentally. Cryptography enshrines privacy back into human interaction, both financial and written. DeFi is the financial instantiation of this. And just to add a little augment here, because some guys in here might be like, well, wait, crypto's not actually that private. It's pseudonymous because you can see it's open ledger. You can see everyone's interactions and transactions. It's very easy to anonymize who you are there, and to then make that activity as something that everyone sees, but no one knows who it's associated with. Okay, so everyone can see what I'm always doing on chain, always, but no one knows necessarily that it's me. Okay, so that's the privacy element. Like it's pseudonymous by its very nature, and if there's ever an issue where someone possibly connects the two, it's relatively easy to break that connection as well. So it is instantiating privacy or instilling privacy back into that. So cryptography marks the first time that technology has rebundled privacy, security, and censorability back into our existence while maintaining the scalability and permanence. But again, viewing this cycle as it is, quantum computing will probably break that. I don't know, I hope it doesn't, but it probably will. I don't know enough to really comment about quantum computing, but it seems like it's theoretically possible. There should be a meme all of you understand. If no one in here has seen True Detective Season 1, get out. But yeah, this shows the cycles here of like this struggle now you're seeing between the state and technology since cryptography, since the 1970s. IBM forms the first crypto group and creates the Lucifer cipher. Data encryption standards are adopted, zero-knowledge proofs emerge, cypherpunks show up. Cryptography used to be a U.S. munition, according to the U.S. government. It used to be literally considered a munition. Too dangerous for the public to have this privacy thing. That was done away with, but then in 2001, we get the Patriot Act. KYC is mandated. KYC is not that old a phenomenon in its current instantiation. It really did come about in like 2001 the way we know it now, where you have to just like expose yourself completely, which again, this is not something that can't be figured out in low-level police work. So like the need to do this for everyone always is entirely unnecessary. And then you have the Snowden stuff, Monero, which is a privacy token. Tornado is sanctioned now. I'm quite sure eventually they'll stop picking the privacy tools and just say anything that breaks connection is illegal or on a list. Right now they're picking Tornado because these people are slow and they just don't think they understand what they're regulating. But they'll probably just document the whole space that anonymizes is probably something they'll try to put on a sanction list. So it's just the nature of privacy. We fight for it. It gets taken away. You fight for it again. But this is a very strong tool in that fight. So with that being said, class, I don't know how we're doing on time. I got one more section. I can be quick about it. I don't know. Are we good? Was that?
A few more minutes.
Okay. So yeah, third part here. I'll be fast. This is more philosophical. I mean, I guess all this has been kind of philosophical, but rooted in like a concrete understanding of the technology. This comments on something I kind of see as digital homeostasis between AI and crypto. AI is artificial abundance, crypto is artificial scarcity. These two are so poetically at odds to me. I view them as almost like competing Darwinian forces, like a technological extension of human cognition. Developmentally, they're at very similar stages too. Cryptography proves ownership, secures your information. There's no reason for there to be 21 million Bitcoin. It's completely arbitrary. But we can make that a artificially scarce asset by way of cryptography, which we need scarcity. Otherwise, we don't know how to value it. We don't know how it retains value. Cryptography provides that. Whereas AI relies on free, open access to data for its training, and it lets it create this content deluge of whatever. Anyone can just print a book by giving a small prompt, any picture you want, digital abundance. Similar to how the body has mechanisms to maintain equilibrium, which is homeostasis, it balances extremes to keep things steady. I think these two technologies should be viewed similar to competing forces in something of like a biological organism, a technological one. They contrast each other to keep a kind of digital homeostasis as an antagonizing and symbiotic force between each other. AI, as you guys may have already seen, is able to flood the world with ordinariness, banalities, common stuff. It's not a competitive advantage for the same reason if you were playing basketball and everyone stands on a 6-foot box, no one's like usefully taller. Everyone's taller and can do some things better, but no one's necessarily more gifted. So the thing that shines through is still human ability at that point and how you're able to use the tool. The tool itself does not make you gifted. It does not necessarily make you more capable. And that most people definitionally won't be able to differentiate themselves with this because most people are average and normal and will use the tool very averagely and normalishly. Crypto will act as a ship across these very mid-waves, allowing things like proof of origination and constraint on the digital realm and a compass to navigate this AI deluge of information, this artificial scarcity. And unlike the creator and creativity side, asking like when AI will be better than humans at creative or competitive domains, I think is a very misguided question that doesn't understand the point of creative output or competitive output. It's because we want to consume it, us as humans. It's not made for the AI, it's made for us. Humans are the arbiters of value. Value is inherently very subjective, especially from a content or creativity lens. We don't always value what's objectively best or what's technically superior. If someone's lip syncing at a concert, you don't like that, right? That bothers you. It's like, that guy's cheating. It's better though, like it's more clear, it's concise than his natural voice. Would you rather watch two AIs play chess, or do you want to watch Magnus? Everyone wants to watch Magnus. No one wants to see the technical superiority of two AIs playing chess. Sculptures, I added this in yesterday after Fen. A CNC machine could make something far more technically precise and beautifully lined than what Fen could do. Do you want to see that? Like, would that inspire you looking at it to see like a CNC made beautiful thing? Like, it's nice, but if Fen shows you something, you'd be like, oh, that's just, there's an expression there, right? There's something there that you like and that resonates with you. We're evolved to seek out exceptional human output like that. So I don't think artistics will be, and I say this as I make art with AI, I know. I don't think we're going to, our artistics or creatives are going to be necessarily hard out. I don't think they have to hate this technology. They just have to understand I don't think it's that much of a threat to them. And it's incumbent on them to use it in a more creative and useful way. It's a magnificent tool, incredible tool. And it's a very ill-defined, broad tool that doesn't have an exact instruction set, which means the more creative, the more intelligent, the high ones with more verbal intelligence, spatial intelligence are going to leverage it better. The cream of the crop still rises. We also value too the amount of effort someone put into something. Labor perception bias, like if it's hand stitched, if it has like a human element to it, inherently usually sells for more. You value it more. You as a human are evolved to seek that out. That doesn't go away because the AI is cool. And this doesn't apply to all goods, but for creative output, it's really where value comes from. And I think human made will be something of like a new organic in a way. You could say human augmented, think of yourself like a centaur in that way, half human, half, bull, AI kind of underpinned, but it's the human element to you that still is the distinction. So yeah, you will still want anthropogenic organic work from brilliant people because it's your programming to seek it out. You could train an LLM on Curtis and have it probably spit out his mannerisms and everything beautifully well. Like if you find out it was an LLM, I don't, you'll be a little put off. You won't read it. I'd rather read his updates when he sends them out himself, right? It's an actual human expression and analysis. And even if it is like technically or economically a little inferior, you don't care. It's just what we kind of look for. Cryptography can kind of work to demonstrate that too. Like when someone issues something, or deepfakes, for example, they can be cryptographically signed as originating from a certain party. You can't necessarily prove everything is authentic with crypto, but you can prove something authentically came from a party that you recognize. So like noteworthy people, what have you, if they sign that like a PGP signature, that's a way to distinguish like deepfakes. You're like, no, I didn't really say that because it didn't come from this address. I didn't sign it distinctly. So again, cryptography can be an artificial scarcity on like AI manipulation or kind of truth distortion by using it as kind of like a proof of origination. So yeah, this is a recap on everything I just said there. So that's it. Thank you.